Hi, everybody. It's Mike from Here, the Watchman. On today's Watchman Report, we have my dear friend, Derek Gilbert from Skywatch TV. And I'm telling you, folks, when I grow up and learn to interview people, I want to interview people exactly the way Derek Gilbert does it. The man is amazing. He and his wonderful wife, the Hear the Watchman conference in Dallas, Texas recently. And Derek, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
It's my honor, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Well, Derek, can you share with the audience here for just a couple of minutes? And we want to really get into the meat of some things that are pertinent right now. But, you know, you came to Hear the Watchman in Dallas. What was the experience like for you, especially the couples panel?
It was, well, it was powerful. That's really the only way to put it. It was, I think, necessary. It's needed because we can spend a lot of time focusing on some of the more spectacular or sensational aspects of what we do in ministry. And there is a need for that because there are a lot of people who have questions about those things, questions that aren't being answered in the church. And if those questions were being addressed, then there wouldn't be a need for conferences like Hear the Watchman. But where the rubber meets the road is how we integrate that information into our daily lives. And as husbands and wives, we are essentially should be the most highly coordinated battle unit in the spiritual war, the supernatural war, in which we're deployed. I mean, all of us essentially are on a battlefield, whether we admit it, recognize it, or not. Not following the same set of orders, we become easy targets for the enemy. So sitting on that panel with the Tollies, with the Daubenmeyers, with the Begleys was really an interesting experience because you had different perspectives. You had two couples that married as high school sweethearts, one couple just married, and Josh Tolley had waited, didn't marry in his 20s like many of us. Woman came along. And then you had Sharon and me, and in our experience, both of us have been previously married. So we've seen life from both sides now, to, you know, quote an old song. And so we all had different perspectives to bring to that panel. And it was a real blessing because it just reinforced my own sense of gratitude that God, in those occasions where we don't get it right the first time, we don't roll the strike, God makes it possible for us to pick up the spare, and still put a 10 on the score column. So I think that was really useful. The feedback that we got afterward was really humbling, because I certainly don't consider myself an expert on marriage. If I was an expert, I'd have got it right the first time, and certainly I had a lot of fault to bear for my first marriage not working out. But there were, well, as you know, because one of the gentlemen approached the two of us as we were talking in the hall after that session and said it was worth the minutes for the travel to hotel and the registration for the conference just to see that marriage panel and to view it in that light as husbands and wives, as fellow soldiers on a battlefield. So, yeah, that was really something. And I really, I think I've, with that panel, kind of set the tone for myself for the weekend, because by the end of the weekend, people were just coming up to our table and giving me gifts of little, travel packs of Kleenex, because I'm as I get older, I find myself getting more emotional than I thought I was when I was younger.
Well, that's okay, because God touches us, and that's what happens. I mean, it's real men do cry, folks. They really do. Just for different reasons.
Coach Dave showed that too when he demonstrated prayer for his wife. That was really powerful. Yeah.
We were blessed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, Derek, there's some crazy stuff going on in the world today. We've all been talking about it. We have Syria, we have North Korea, we have Russia, we have Afghanistan, we have Iran. We have all this stuff going on. What really seems to be the tone is that Satan is afraid and Satan is throwing things out at us. You did a piece the other day, satanic rituals in Haiti, and they were the blood rituals. Can you expound on that a little bit and let us know what's going on there?
Well, this isn't something that I'm expert on, but it was a news item that caught my attention, and I think we, in our, let's say, word I'm looking for, we've been so desensitized in the West to the spirit realm that when we see events like what happened on Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday, if you prefer, in Haiti, we just sort of look at it as a cultural event. It was an annual event that takes place in one of Haiti's largest cities, where on Easter Sunday, people will gather, and voodoo priests and priestesses will slaughter goats and cows, smear the blood on the white garments of women who want to be then hosts of what they call Loa. And Loa are spirits that they believe in the voodoo religion control the world. And the purpose is to invite these Loa into their bodies so that they can then ask of them questions for a prophetic word, for favors to be granted, things like that. And the spirit realm through a Christian lens, it should be easy for us to see what's going on here. They are performing a ritual involving the sacrifice of animals to invite demonic possession. But even though I'd heard of this ritual before, I never really paid much attention to it. Again, it's one of those things that we in the West just sort of look at as a curious cultural practice. And those are all around us. I interviewed Reverend Dr. Robert Bennett, who's a Lutheran scholar. He's actually the gentleman in charge of their the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, going to other nations to train pastors. And he's written a couple of books on the practice of demonic possession, and was his doctoral thesis, which is remarkable because the Lutheran Church in general is not known for dealing with the spirit realm on a personal level. I grew up in the Lutheran Church, and there was nothing I ever heard. To Madagascar to study the growth of the church there, and wound up changing the topic of his thesis when he saw somebody fall down in front of him at a church ceremony, begin writhing and screaming and frothing at the mouth, and suddenly a group of lay people come over and began to exorcise the demon. And when he asked what was going on, thinking this can't be happening, this must be a joke they're playing on the guy from America, they said, no, this happens all the time. And so we've got a group of lay people trained to deal with it. Well, in Madagascar, as in Haiti, they believe that the spirits, in the case of in Madagascar, they believe it's the spirits of their ancestors, control everything, and that they have to be appeased on a regular basis in order to guarantee happy, healthy, long life. Because if you make the spirits angry, they can do things to you, bad things to you, and so you don't want that to happen. So it's a similar situation in Haiti. They believe that these spirits are everywhere, and that you have to appease them, and that by doing this ritual every year, and apparently it's one of a number of rituals that the voodoo priests and priestesses aligned with Christian holy to conceal from the Roman Catholic Church what they were doing after the island was evangelized by the Roman Catholic Church. This is basically how they invite demonic possession for the purpose of trying to get favor. But like I said, most of us in the West just sort of ignore it. And it's just a curious thing, because these rituals don't actually work. These spirits don't really exist. This really interfere or interface with our day-to-day lives. Just that most American Christians have bought into that, which was one of the famous usual suspects, which actually was drawn for its story. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he doesn't exist. They are out there and they're active. It's just American Christians are basically so desensitized and asleep that we have become a non-factor in the supernatural war. We are basically, we're like Switzerland in the supernatural war. We're just sitting back behind our walls and just ignoring everything. But newsflash, not making a decision, not participating means you've already made a decision. And sadly, you're on the wrong side.
You do all your studies and everything you've looked into. I mean, what do you think is going on? Why is this demonic presence so overwhelming right now? I mean, you look at the whole, we have ISIS, we have North Korea, we have everything going on out there. And just this demonic presence that's just evolving. Why is it happening so strongly now? Is that a sign of something to come?
Well, it certainly seems to indicate we're closer to the end than we were 100 years ago or 2,000 years ago. I think partly we sense it more because of the 24-hour news cycle and because people naturally think that the day in which they live is things are far more real and important and imminent than they were in past history. But, you know, if we look back 100 years from today, 1917, World War I, the horror of tens of millions of people, literally tens of millions of people losing their lives in a conflict. I mean, today, we can monopolize a 24-hour news cycle for days on end. And I'm not trying to belittle this or diminish the impact of a terror attack that kills 80 people or 100 people. I mean, that's still terrible. And are evidence of demonic activity in the world. Death is the calling card of the enemy of Jesus Christ. But 100 years ago, there were literally tens of millions of people being slaughtered in the trenches in France during World War I. You had 20 to 50 million people dying from the Spanish flu outbreak of 1918 and 1919. So, you know, was that any less evil than what's happening today? I don't think so. When we look at history and look at the 14 centuries, 1,400 years of violent conquest by Islam, is what the Islamic State today, is what they're doing today any worse than what the Ottoman Turks were doing when they were at the gates of Vienna twice within the last 500 years? I mean, the 17th century, about the time my ancestors were leaving Switzerland and heading for Germany on their long route that ultimately brought them to America, the Turks were at the gates of Vienna, and it was only through the intervention of the Polish king, King Johann, I'm going to get this wrong, Sobieski, I think, that Vienna was saved, which may well have saved Western Europe from conquest in the 17th century. So Russia and Turkey fought like 12 major wars, in the couple hundred years leading up to World War I. So are things any worse today? I don't know. It may seem that way because now with the internet, we can see these things taking place almost in real time, and we have access to video, inhuman events taking place on the other side of the world, beheadings and grotesque executions by the butchers of the Islamic State. So it seems more real and immediate to us. I would argue that this stuff really never went away. It just seems more real because A, it's happening in our time, and so it impacts us more personally, and because we've got access to a lot more of this information through the internet. That said,
yeah, I would agree with that.
That said, I do think it indicates, you're right, it does indicate that the enemy is making it very clear. And again, it astonishes me that American Christians in general don't recognize the actions of the spirit realm, because I can't see any other way to explain what the Islamic State does. The fact that they can rationalize to themselves, weaponize, teach children who should be on the playground, having nap time after lunch in the afternoon, and having them execute prisoners of war, teaching these children to murder at the ages of 5, 6, 7 years old. That is demonic. That is clearly demonic. There is no other way to explain it. You cannot say this is just human activity, and if we just had a jobs program to get these guys off the street, they wouldn't be teaching children how to use handguns. No, I'm sorry. There is a spirit at work here that clearly hates you and your family and wants to kill everything that you love. And that is the war in which we are all deployed. And yeah, it is coming to a head. It is coming toward an end game, because the weapons, I guess this is the big difference now from 1917. I mean, in that era, they had some new weapons that were weapons of mass destruction. You know, the tank had just been invented. Machine guns were still relatively new. Chemical weapons had just been invented. But today, we've got access to nuclear weapons. We've got access to technology that makes the distribution of these weapons so much more deadly and lethal. I just wonder at the sanity of New Agers who believe that somehow humanity will create heaven on earth, because the only thing we've gotten better with over the centuries is killing one another. That's the only thing we've gotten better at.
Sad, isn't it? I mean, you're so right. I mean, that's very true. So let's shift gears a little bit, Derek. Tell us about, you have a new book that's blowing off the shelves. I mean, I've seen reports that it's not even safe for you to go back into the Skywatch warehouse. Because
the ladies there have been joking about that.
Yeah, you've overrun them, and you know, you might get packed in a box and shipped out if you're not careful. So tell us about your new book.
Well, I appreciate you asking. Yeah, the printer was a little late in delivery, so they had to pre-pack several thousand boxes waiting for this to show up from the printer. We finally got the delivery of this, and so they had about a week where all they did was throw these into boxes, stick labels on those boxes, and send them out as part of the package with the new book by Dr. Michael Heiser, Reversing Herman. So humbling to see the response, because this is my first, written a few novels in the past. This was the first time I'd tried writing a whole, and tried to write it something that I had not heard in church before. The Great Inception looks at and digs into archaeology, ancient cosmology, languages, drawing mostly on secular scholars, downloading all the academic papers I can get my hands on that deal with the ancient Near East and the culture, their cosmology, the gods they believed in, and things like that, and the history of the region, just to see how it tracks against the Bible. And when you begin with the understanding that the Bible that the Bible documents the existence of the gods of the nations surrounding ancient Israel, Baal and Asherah, Ishtar, Molech, Chemosh, Dagon, were real entities, and that the gods of the ancient world, and that God in the Bible acknowledged that these small g gods were real. Now, you see this in Exodus 12:12, where God tells Moses that on the night that he slays the firstborn, he will execute judgment on all the gods of Egypt. In Psalm 82, when God takes his place in the midst of the divine council, he stands in the midst of the gods. God, Yahweh, says to them, "You are gods, all of you, sons of the Most High, but like men you will die." There are a number of other places in the Bible as well, but I mean, it's clear that God is talking to real entities here. Fallen angels, okay, that's fine. But the Bible calls them gods, and God calls them gods. So I'm not out of bounds in using that term in this sense. Talking about created beings, not beings on par with Yahweh. He is not one of many. He is one, unique, and alone. But the word God is something we attached certain characteristics to that clearly the prophets didn't, writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And the Bible is a record of the conflict, the rebellion of these small g gods. And then start looking at ancient history and ancient cosmology and find that really supports the biblical narrative. With our Bible study, the Bible study that Sharon and I record each week, the Gilbert House, gilberthouse.org, where in Exodus 14, we read that God told Moses to turn back. This was when Moses was leading the Israelites out of Egypt. And whatever their escape route was, scholars still don't agree on which direction they took. But wherever they were, God told Moses, turn back. Turn back and camp at this specific place on the shore of the Red Sea in front of something called Baal Zephon. Now, I know that Baal is a Canaanite god, so I wondered, now what is Baal doing in Egypt? I thought Egypt was where we found Ra and Osiris and ISIS. And well, history tells us that there was a period of around the time of Isaac and Jacob, where northern Egypt was under the control of Semitic-speaking people called the Hyksos. Later scholars have given them as a term based on a term the Egyptians gave them, which means rulers of foreign lands. But they were Baal worshippers. Their culture, their rituals, their religion, and they were worshippers of Baal. So why did God tell the Israelites to turn around and camp in front of this place? And specifically said, facing it, facing Baal Zephon. And what is a Zephon anyway? Secular archaeology and what Near East know, Mount Zephon is the holy mountain of Baal. It's actually in Turkey, about 600 miles north of Egypt. That's how well known this place was. Everyone in the ancient Near East knew Baal's palace was located on Mount Zephon. Today it's called Jebel al-Akra. It's right on the border between Turkey and Syria, close to where the ancient city of Antioch was located. Well, there on the shore of the Red Sea. Well, Baal, if you know anything about Baal's cosmology, his history, in Canaanite myth, he was the god who defeated the chaos god of the sea, a god called Yam, who wanted to become the king of the gods. Well, Baal defeated him with a couple of magic clubs that were made for him by the Canaanite equivalent of Vulcan, the god who made all the armaments and weapons for the gods. Baal became the patron god of sailors for their descendants, the Phoenicians. So for sailors worship Baal because he was the one who protected them from the might and the wrath of the sea. So now it begins to make sense. You got a place holy to Baal, patron god of sailors, right on the shore of the Red Sea. And the Israelites camped there all night with the column of fire, which is the angel of the Lord, or what we Christians, who read Christians, would call Jesus. That's a Christophany in the Old Testament. Keeping the Egyptians and the Israelites apart, and then the sea parts. Must have thought Baal was leading them into a trap until the Israelites got to the other side. Followed, of course, the sea fell in on the army of, or the Egyptians. As it turns out, after the Hyksos were kicked out of Egypt to worship years, Ramses the Great was a Baal worshiper. Anyway, so it occurs to me that God specifically engineered this confrontation on the shore of the Red Sea. Theological point. This was a conflict between God and Baal to the Israelites who they should worship as power over what was supposed to be Baal's domain. It was not just leading Israel out of Egypt, delivering them from the hand of Pharaoh. Yahweh was delivering Israel from the hand, which, not coincidentally, God of the people who lived in Canaan, which God, Yahweh, his land for his people, his allotted inheritance. So made me think, well, maybe there's in the Bible where there are confrontations like this between God, the creator, and God. So when you start looking at other places throughout the New Testament, where things happen that make a lot more sense when you understand them in terms of a supernatural God Most High, and the small g created gods who rebelled against their creator.
Fascinating work. I mean, folks, you want to pick up a copy of The Great Inception. Derek, how do people get the book now?
And, a lot of Amazon.com, of course, has the book, but they can get a special offer through Skywatch TV if they're interested. Skywatchtv.com or Skywatch TV Store. Find a link at skywatchtv.com. But if you go to skywatchtvstore.com, you'll find a special offer there. My book, Mike Heiser's book, Reversing Hermon, plus a hardback edition of the Book of Enoch, video DVD of talking about the material in the book, various aspects. You'll be surprised to learn that one of the confrontations in the Bible was between God and another is between God and the Titans of Greek mythology, based on solid research. This is not me trying to pull stuff out of a verse, twist it around, and invent something. This is academic, secular researchers who don't seeking at it through a biblical lens. Herman it builds on his first book, The Unseen Realm, and it shows how God or Jesus' mission was not just to, which of course is critical, but also to reverse the effects of the other sins that the Watchers who came down in Mount Hermon brought to Earth, like the things we weren't supposed to know: sorcery, necromancy, witchcraft, weapons of war. Things like that. It makes the transfiguration, which took place on Mount Hermon, and what immediately a lot. It makes it a lot easier to understand. Oh, that's why he did that, and that's why he did it there, and that's why he did this other thing and that's why he did this thing right before the transfiguration. At the foot of Mount Hermon. The Bible is filled with things like that. If you understand, these small g gods are real. And then to teach the Israelites the power, the confrontation on Mount Carmel between Elijah and even after that, and the fact that Baal was granted a couple of miraculous victories over the Aramean armies. The concept of holy ground, God was supreme on that piece of ground called Israel, controlling the whole assembly. It's a phrase that you find in the Bible a number of times, and I've never heard it explained before. But as Mike points out in The Unseen Realm, and then when you start digging in the Bible and applying that divine counsel worldview, this holy money to understanding this supernatural world. This is about the fact that Adam and Eve got kicked out of a mountain, which was Eden. Yes, it was a garden, but it's a garden on a mountain, and kicked out of the divine council, which means of assembly. And God's whole plan of redemption is not just to redeem us from sin, but to bring us to mountain, which is Israel, which is why there's so much political unrest, instability over who gets to control what is. As we get deeper into the end times, the desire to build the third temple by the Jews, furious reaction of the Muslims to any Jewish or Christian presence on the Temple Mount will increase. There will be war, and ultimately that war for the Mount of the Assembly, the holy mountain of God, Mount Zion, will culminate in Armageddon, which will be fought at Jerusalem, there for the Temple Mount.
Wow. So listen, folks, you want to go to skywatchtv.com. You can just Google Derek Gilbert, Sharon Gilbert. Watch their show. They do Sci-Fi Friday. Derek is on almost every day of the week with breaking information on things that you need to hear. And we are so excited and so blessed that we will have Sharon and Derek joining us again in Boise, Idaho for our conference there, August 18th through the 21st. That's the Sign of the Heavenlies, the Redemption Convention. And we also have the Eclipse Encounter, where we're going to all go out and watch the eclipse and pray together for America. Derek, I can't wait to see you there. I want to thank you so much for being a part of the last Hear the Watchman and for taking time to come on our show today.
No, it's my honor, Mike. We're really looking forward to it. Never been to Idaho. The closest I've been is the Montana state line, but I understand it's beautiful. And getting a chance to see a total eclipse of the sun, especially in the company of fellow soldiers that we'll have there, is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Well, and we'll take you out and get you some good potatoes while you're up here.
They're not on the diet. Sorry.
Well, listen, God bless. Folks, go to skywatchtv.com. You can see Tom Horn's work there, Derek Gilbert's work there, Sharon Gilbert's work there. So much is available to you there. So I'm asking you, go to their website, check out what they have, and get schooled up, because the battle is on its way. We're already in it. And if you're not in it, you're going to be in it. So please get ready. So till next time, folks, thank you so much for watching our show today and for listening to Derek and I. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless you so much.